perhaps the tweaks will throw them off a little bit.
Well, it's going to be the Glamora and the Entei for Kazuki in this game number 1, and it is the Fergaraf and the Incineroar. This already kind of speaks to me that Aaron is going to try to go for the Ursaluna Blood Moon in the back with another key supportive piece, but hey, anything can really happen.
A lot of options here, and sort of a tricky combination of Pokemon to face off against. Really seeing the effect of Entei's ability. Doesn't care about Intimidate, doesn't care about Fake Out, so Entei's going to get to do something here, but yeah, I mean, it does seem like a pretty clear path to a Trick Room if Aaron wants it, although if he does go for the Fake Out here, you know, it's going to wind up in a little bit of a slow start, where like, well, great, the Trick Room's up, but he doesn't really have the ability then with the Pokemon out to take advantage of it, and we saw the pitfall of that last round, right, where Trick Room kept going up and then not really doing anything.
What's really tough about this, though, is that, yes, you can go for the Fake Out here into the Glamora just to be able to stop something like the Meteor Beam that would be able to get a knockout onto the Fergaraf with a double up as long as it hits. The sad part about this is that you are actually going to be setting off the Toxic Debris, so anything that comes in now into that Incineroar switch is going to have to take that poison, unless you have something like the Amoonguss in the back, which would be able to help absorb those toxic spikes.
Yeah, I mean, at least two, it's only one layer for now. So just that regular poison, not quite as devastating as the toxic, perhaps, if, I guess especially for a Trick Room team, right, where like you really don't want to waste turns switching around needlessly. But there will have to be a little purposeful switching around here, probably. Unlikely the Incineroar is going to want to stay on the field and try to duke this one out against two Pokemon. It's not going to do a whole lot again. So we'll have to see if Traylor can successfully pivot at some point the Ursaluna onto the field and get off some attacks to take advantage of this Trick Room.
What's really nice about the Entei, though, is that it's so bulky. There's not really many ways that Aaron can, at this point in time, be able to chunk down that Entei enough that you can actually get rid of it. One way that'll help that, though, is the knockoff to get rid of that pesky Assault Vest. So it opens up this Entei to take even a little bit more damage from this Hyper Voice. Now that Hyper Voice is also going to be boosted up thanks to the Throat Spray to help get that special attack up into a really nice spot, but that's why the Entei has Snarl.
It's trading boosts and drops there now. 2 Snarls and 1 Throat Spray, so 1 level of reduced special attack for this poor Fergaraf.
But now the Meteor Beam. Glamora, can you show us a Meteor Beam? You've got the special attack boost, but you have to actually hit your move. Power Herb is going to allow this Glamora to go ahead and fire it off immediately, hitting its mark into the Fergaraf, and that's just going to be a knockout. Very clean here, but the only problem is it does open up Aaron to be able to bring in a new Pokemon in its place.
Yeah, that's one way to get the, or I guess a Pokemon in the back end, but as you called out before, it is this Amoonguss going to remove these poison spikes from the field and start threatening a Spore onto either of these Pokemon. Perhaps now will be the time where Aaron goes to the pivot, but he's got to be a little careful here, right? We got the spoilers there as he was looking at the Pokemon in the back. We do know it is that Ursaluna, but with Fergaraf having been defeated, you know, there's not going to be a second Trick Room, right? So the Ursaluna, only a couple of turns left of Trick Room to try to take advantage of before it's going to be facing most likely a speed disadvantage for the rest of the game.
And a lot of times when players are playing this matchup with a couple of faster pieces on it, what Kazuki has, you wait. You have your fast mode in the back for once you've stalled out the Trick Room. So we don't know what's going to be in the back there, but
See extreme speed going onto the Glamora, activating these the toxic debris. It's like, hey, you know, nice job trying to get rid of this poison, but I think I'd like it after all. But Aaron firing back for some poison of his own.
Yeah, that's going to be a Sludge Bomb, not a move that we typically see on something like the Amoonguss. It does get the poison, so just in case that Entei did not survive the Flare Blitz, it would have been able to take the rest of the chip at the end of the turn. But I do love seeing that extreme speed play. We also have the Glamora able to fire one back itself, and it's also going to set up a poison onto Aaron's Incineroar.
You're in an aggressively poison-themed game here. 2 different Pokemon getting poisoned this turn, and one in the back has basically been poisoned by the effects of this turn, right? Not any way to get Mungus in and out without bringing Ursaluna in first and getting poisoned now. So sneaky little play by Kazuki there, but I like it. You know, Entei, as it turned out, wasn't going to be able to act anyway. Would have just been knocked out no matter what. So some irrelevant damage on Glamora in exchange for the poison on Ursaluna. I think that's not too bad.
No, it's really not. Like, you love to see plays like that. Now the Ogerpon gets to come in and also threaten a ton. It's a natural grass type, so it's going to be immune to the Spore. But you also have the opportunity, if Kazuki sees it as an option, to just go for the Terrestrialization and get that special defense boost. Could really help out against something like that Blood Moon Ursaluna.
Yeah, I mean, this is starting to look really tricky for Aaron, right? Where Kazuki just played the beginning of this game so well, hasn't really given too much up. Entei did its job, and by the time it left the field, I think it was kind of done. And now, it's easy spike your shield, avoid anything too crazy happening. As Ogerpon's looking pretty safe against both these Pokemon, can't be spored, so going to be able to get an attack off here. Just really well played game by Kazuki so far.
Absolutely. Parting Shot, though, was also going to go into the Glamora. What a smart spiky shield here, because you're stalling out yet another turn of Trick Room where we can't see this Blood Moon Ursaluna come in. Of course, though, Ivy Cudgel can do the job for you, so while you don't get the Parting Shot to naturally get that Blood Moon Ursaluna in, almost better that you didn't at this point, so you can get it in now for free without taking any damage apart from this poison.
Yeah, I mean, at least maybe an opportunity for Aaron to start trying to pick up some knockouts. But I think he's also just kind of fishing a little bit there, right? Where realize he's losing the game. Well, okay, well, it's likely I'm going to see this Glamora protect itself from attacks. But I kind of have to go for it anyway. Where I'm going to need maybe Kazuki to give me something in order to get through this game. But Kazuki plays well, right? It doesn't do anything unnecessary there. And yeah, boy, this poor Ursaluna is going to have to do a lot of damage here. Get the right Pokemon next to it if he wants to try and pull that off. But yeah, Ogerpon in particular, they're looking pretty scary on the other side of the field.
Yeah, now it can terrestrialize, so I would be very nervous about this Blood Moon Ursaluna. But it's so tough in this position because it's a 50-50. Do you want to try to go for the Blood Moon, which is a huge nuke of damage, or do you want to just go for the Hyper Voice, which gives you great spread with this terrestrialization?
Yeah, I mean, I guess speaking of terrestrialization, kind of necessary. There do want to be a pure normal type Pokemon in this matchup.
That is so true.
But I guess the nice thing here too is, I guess defensively and offensively you want the same thing, right? Shores up your ability to fight against Ogerpon and also increases the damage. We'll have to see if it's enough. Ogerpon this time going for the spiky shield, preferring to keep itself healthy.
Glamora is going to get put to sleep as well, so a smart choice here by Aaron to just continue to try to mitigate some of this damage. But with the Hyper Voice, of course, you're not going to be able to hit the Ogerpon, but does it get enough damage down onto this Glamora? It is.
That's a ton.
Yeah, that's a ton.
It's a critical hit.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a critical hit. I'm just saying. I mean,
wait a minute. That shouldn't be
Ursaluna's
that
pretty powerful, but are you kidding me?
Yeah, not quite
they
that
were,
much.
in fact, kidding me.
Yes. Now we have Kazuki, though, down to his final two Pokemon. But Trick Room is over. So what is in the back that could potentially run away with this game? It's the Urshifu.
Oh, this got interesting in a hurry here. I mean, Urshifu going to be threatening a lot of damage on the other side of the field. And as you mentioned, critically, that Rocky Helmet not on the Amoonguss, right? If there is the Rocky Helmet there instead, maybe just redirect an attack. Then Ursaluna can pick up a knockout, but without that, I don't know how you get the second hit on the Urshifu, right? You need something kind of crazy here.
Well, crazy just might be what we're getting. We're going to see a terrestrialization for one of the final turns of this game number 1. It is going to be the Urshifu that gets the Terra Dark, able to help boost up something like the Wicked Blow. It's not also, because it's Focus Sash, it's not choice locked in anything. But here is the big difference maker. What about this turn could be different? It's going to be a Rage Powder and a Follow Me on both sides to try to keep these huge attackers safe. But the Wicked Blow, how much damage does this do into the Amoonguss? Is it even able to hang on through this? It does, and it now gets a Citrus Berry as well, so it's got one more hit that it can take here. This Ogerpon, though, is about to take this Blood Moon. That is a little scary, but it is... it might not survive this.
Yeah, I mean, one of the most powerful attacks of the format, easily taking down this Ogerpon. And Aaron's turned a pretty difficult-looking matchup into a temporary, at least, Pokemon advantage here with this 1-0. However, still a tricky spot is Ursaluna taking damage now, both from the poison and from the Life Orb recoil, and sort of a tricky spot where Urshifu could knock out either of these Pokemon with one more Wicked Blow, and critically still has that Focus Sash intact.
So that's really tough here, because you can go for the Hyper Voice. It is going to be single target, so you're able to get some decent damage down, but the Wicked Blow is going to be plenty to be able to finish off this Amoonguss based on the damage we saw on the turn prior. So it all comes down to whether or not this Ursaluna is going to be able to withstand an attack, but this Urshifu could just close combat at next turn.
Yeah, hard to imagine how it's going to survive this one. And Yeah, I mean, I guess with close combat available, maybe it didn't really matter, but you do kind of see, too, the benefit of that sneaky extreme speed earlier. You know, that poison damage continuing to whittle down the HP of this Ursaluna, ensuring that a knockout here will be inevitable, and we see because of that, Aaron locking in the forfeit. So a fantastic Game 1 win here by Kazuki.
He did a great job of stalling out those Trick Room turns, so I feel like maybe taking a bit of a page out of Justin's book from that previous match, where Trick Room is just such a vital part to Aaron's team and the game plan he tried to go for in that game number 1. Now that the Trick Room had gone up from the Fergarath, how do you get the Blood Moon in without it taking too much damage? That was so difficult, and Kazuki made that the struggle for him.
Yeah, I wonder if that won't just be the story of the weekend, right? We've seen a lot of teams with like kind of Trick Room modes, even if they aren't like hard Trick Room, do really well the last 2 weekends. And, you know, we've seen now a game and a round where the Trick Room team's got Trick Room up, but then what, right? Where I think the other side of the field, you know, you can see Kazuki doing such a good job here, picking up that quick knockout in the Fergarath, not having to worry about a second Trick Room because of it, and then just keeping pressure enough on the field. It was never safe for Aaron to get Ursaluna in and start rolling.
I think that was something else that I was really impressed by with Kazuki is I think a lot of people would look at those free switches and go, in Trick Room? No way am I giving this over for free. That would feel so bad. But recognizing that doesn't really matter. I get the Fergarath out of the way. You can't go for Trick Room again. I've got so much pressure with Protect, Spiky Shield on this team. I can just stall out these turns of Trick Room, especially if I get some calls right, where you think that I'm going for Protect here and I can damage with something else. Fantastic. You saw the double hit into the Spiky Shield of Glamora before. Great call there from Kazuki.
Yeah, especially given how close the game wound up being, right? I think I really like the foresight that he had planning this end game, right? Where it was really close, but also it kind of wasn't, right? Where at some point, because like, oh, I see the path to the end where I win no matter what here. I just need to make sure that I set up my board correctly. You know, 1 HP, but you know, it's a focus sash, right? There was not really any way that Aaron could have broken it. You can't protect against it because it's Urshifu, so you know you can kind of just safely Wicked Blow there. And yeah, I mean, I guess that's going to be one thing for Aaron in this second game, right? He's going to have to find a way to get that extra little bit of damage on the Urshifu so he doesn't need 2 full power swings from the Ursaluna in order to knock it out.
Yeah, you called it immediately when we were looking into the game. You said, oh, that focus dash is going to be really pesky. And so it absolutely was. And I think we also have to consider how much work that Entei was doing. We were discussing, hey, like, what are the differences between like Entei and Chiyu on this team when a lot of cases we've seen the Chiyu in that slot over the Entei. Well, I think it showed off why. It was able to take so many hits and still be able to put on that snarl pressure.
Yeah, I think the snarl is really good in this matchup, right? You don't want to just like hard switch into a snarl because that's also going to stop your Ursaluna from switching, right? So, and then yeah, I mean, even in Trick Room, right? You know, the classic pivot with these teams, like, oh, I'll just parting shot with Incineroar and then I'll get in for free that way. But you're just going to trade stat drops if you do that. And you know, when one side really needs speed control and the other doesn't so much, that's really to Entei's advantage.
Wow, this is a very different looking game right off the bat for this game too. Kazuki is up 1 game, and we are seeing a big pivot here into the faster modes for both of these teams. The Iron Jungulus on the field.
That's a lot of fun. I think kind of both sides maybe predicting where this is going. And we mentioned again in the pregame, well, maybe if you lose the Trick Room, you try out the other speed control move. But Kazuki looks like he was ready for it here, right? A very different approach, likely anticipating something similar to what he got. Although, you know, maybe the Iron Jungulus probably not going to be the most upset not to be facing Glamora down on turn 1 either. So, you know, who knows? Maybe this is what Traylor was looking for.
Yeah, Iron Jungulus is like guaranteed to be the fastest thing on the field. It was going to be a speed boost that it got from its booster energy, so it's going to be able to dish out some pretty meaningful damage here as well. I love the Air Slash option too, because not only is it super effective into both Pokemon, but you also have a chance to flinch here. It is going to be a Detect to kick things off, and Kazuki could very well just go for the double Protect here. Doesn't though. Ogerpon takes a ton of damage from the Air Slash. The Horn Leech does go into the protected Urshifu, but this is going to be an attacking Ogerpon with the Wood Hammer, no less. Recoil, though, is going to be through the roof.
Yeah, it does barely survive there. I was kind of wondering, well, man, that's a lot of damage to take recoil from. But that works out okay for Kazuki, right? Looks a little sketchy when he takes that flying type attack for free, but both sides trading pretty well here. And again, important to keep the differences between the two Ogerpon in mind. They look the same, both wearing the same mask, but beneath those masks, one of them, the more aggressive Swords Dance version of Ogerpon on Aaron's side of the field versus the Follow Me version on the other side. Certainly with super low HP, I think I'd rather have Follow Me, allowing the turn to play a little more predictably. Could be an option for Kazuki to go for a Follow Me and attack with his Urshifu and then pick up a knockout without risking that Focus Sash.
This is really tough, though. I mean, the Iron Jugulus here is going to go for the Snarl, so it does have an opportunity to break the Focus Sash, but it's going to be Entei that takes its place. Actually, really nice to catch on a switch in here for the Snarl, so you are going to be able to just help kind of whittle away a little bit. Urshifu special attack, though, that doesn't matter. Entei's honestly doesn't either. But the Ivy Cudgel is going to be faster than the Urshifu. That's huge to know that it is going to be able to get the leg up in speed.
Yeah, going into the Urshifu slot, though, rather than that juicy fire-type Pokemon just switched in, and the first knockout, once again, will go to Kazuki.
It's hard to be able to make that call, though, right? Because it was the Ogerpon, and if you just hit it, it's going to be able to get that HP recovery thanks to that Water Absorb.
Yeah, Aaron's decisions so far feel a little tepid to me, right? Where kind of like spreading damage out, kind of like he's like kind of like picking the middle option of everything, right? Where he's like he can play super conservatively, he can play super aggressively. He's straight in the middle right now, right? Well, I'm gonna do a little damage to everything. I'm not gonna lose the game on this turn. So he splashed a lot of damage, but he's gonna have to figure things out now, right? Where it's a big decision now. Do you bring a Moongus or Farigiraf in? It really changes the course of this game. It's sort of awkward. We have two Pokemon who probably would prefer the Trick Room option and the speedy Iron Jugulus right next to it, where it's sort of a strange option here. And we do see Farigiraf coming in, having to face down this Urshifu. Going to want its buddy Iron Jugulus to protect it a little bit here.
We could just Terra. We have thought about that option as well. The Terra Fairy would help be able to protect it from something like the Wicked Blow. But it's tough because you're right. Like, Kazuki has been taking positive damage trades here, really starting to gain some momentum in this second game. But where does Aaron go from here? You have to lean into offense somewhere now that your main source of damage is gone.
Yeah, Urshifu getting out of here too, which I don't mind at all. It's pretty pinned there, right? And yeah, I don't think Lamora is like super concerned about either of these Pokemon yet. It would have been pretty crazy to fire a Psychic into that slot, but it does give Aaron a free Tailwind. Well, air quotes free.
Yeah, I mean, it is a little free, though, depending on how you look at it, but you can see the Assault Burst and the Entei coming in so handy. It's barely taking any damage from that Hyper Voice, and even if it's able to get the special attack boost thanks to the Throat Spray, and they can just mitigate it again with another Snarl. Kazuki is doing such a phenomenal job of making sure that Aaron can't do damage.
Yeah, it's a big deal too, right? I mean, Farigiraf typically has some significant defensive training, so they can actually survive using Trick Room. So that the Throat Spray, the damage is a little bit underwhelming, right? Is threatening a potential Psychic across the field onto this Clamora, but that's pretty telegraphed, right? And Entei is still feeling pretty comfortable here, not overly threatened by either of these Pokemon thanks to the Assault Vest, so they kind of just keep whittling away, perhaps, while its teammates do their best to avoid taking too much damage.
Yeah, like Air Slash is still not going to be doing very much. You kind of hope, though, that maybe you're able to catch a Terra. Like, Lamora could go for the Terra Grass. Entei is Terra Fairy, so it's still going to be a nice defensive option for it to have, but just a Spiky Shield here. Kazuki is playing this game so well.
Yeah, we're going to see a bunch of attacks whipped into the Spiky Shield there, trying to catch the Terrestrialization, but it doesn't come. Instead, just like that previous game, 2 attacks going to a Spiky Shield, and now it'll be a free attack for Entei and a free turn of Tailwind Burned.
Free attack from Entei is going to be another Snarl as well, so we thought that Hyper Voice was a little bit lacking. Now it's going to be even more so. And the double up there is nice because it does cover for the Terra, whether the Glamora Terras or not. But it could Terra here pretty safely, I think, and still be able to survive the double up.
Yeah, I mean, now it's a really tough spot for Aaron, where you have 2 Pokemon who do want their special attacks, who have just been getting pelted by this Entei Snarls, and you've already lost 1 Pokemon. Now you kind of feel like you need to rotate all of the Pokemon in the field in order to start shedding these Snarls. On top of that, you still need to pick up the knockout. And once again, we see this Extreme Speed play.
The Extreme Speed play here, too, is really important because now that Toxic Debris is full stacks. It's going to be a Toxic as soon as that final Pokemon hits the field. And Kazuki's really hopeful it's going to be something that it actually can take advantage of. But with the double up into the Glamora, it is going to be taken off the field.
Yeah, although Snarl's not amounting to much there, certainly it still keeps this board position a little more positive for Kazuki, where now whatever's coming in doesn't have to worry quite so much about the attacks of these Pokemon. But in the end, still picking up that knockout. And unlike Kazuki, we do know the possibility of this final Pokemon Aaron's side of the field, right? The toxic spikes look real good if it's Ursaluna. Not nearly as good if this Amoonguss comes in and just eats them right up.
Nope. So it feels really important to come in here. Okay, I thought there was a fake out or something that went into the Glamora before, but I think the Spiky Shield has bamboozled me yet again. But honestly, in this situation though, Aaron has to kind of get around the Tailwind to get to Trick Room, because now he guaranteed has the slowest Pokemon on the field. Also, leaving the Iron Jugulis leaving means that also the booster energy is gone.
Yeah, I mean, in this case, actually good to lose the booster energy. And then with the Terastallation coming in on this Farigiraf, sort of interesting spot for Aaron, right? Kind of mentioned that with that Spiky Shield, Kazuki had done a great job of burning a turn of Tailwind. Perhaps it was actually Aaron who had done a good job of burning a turn of his own Tailwind. Now, flipping speed control mode, showing the flexibility of this team, but both the Tailwind and the Trick Room. Urshifu here going to go for the Detect. That's not going to be quite what he wants, but great Sacred Fire catching this Amoonguss on the switch.
Wow, it is going to be taken down to its berry, and as we can see from the HP recovery, one more Sacred Fire would do it. The Trick Room is able to get up, so you now know that the speed is going to be in Aaron's favor, but yeah, but what do you do here? Like, Iron Jugulis has, you almost, I wonder, feel like have to switch out the Farigiraf to get rid of those special attack drops.
Yeah, it's sort of a tricky spot, right? I think if I'm a Kazuki said, I just knock out the Amoonguss, right? Just start focusing that slot down. Like, well, you're really going to leave the Farigiraf out in the field here with all these reduced levels of special attack? Like, I'll take that one. Although, I mean, on the flip side is, Kazuki's Pokemon have been pretty weakened, right? Where, Hyper Voice says it's going to beat a couple reduced levels of special attack. Maybe it adds up.
Maybe it does add up, but I want to keep in mind that Kazuki hasn't used the Terastallization yet, and that Wellspring Ogerpon is still in the back. So if you keep this Farigiraf on the field, or you're able to keep the Entei up long enough to continue to get another Snarl down, then the Ogerpon can just come in here, Terra, get the special defense boost, and it's so hard to break after that.
Yeah, I think it was very appealing in that last turn to try to spore this slot. It's going to look really ugly if that happens out, the Ogerpon coming in. However, if a Hyper Voice is coming out from this Farigiraf, despite all his reduced levels of special attack, very unlikely to be able to take a Hyper Voice. So this turn could be very volatile either direction. We'll have to see what both trainers opted to do.
It's a good point to remember, too. I kind of forgot that the Ogerpon was really, really low already, so it makes the perfect switch in here to take the Spore. But the Hyper Voice here is just going to be able to get the double knockout. That's really big to be able to get rid of both of those Pokemon, but I don't know if there was a sigh of relief on Aaron's face or if he was worried about that Entei just getting the free switch back.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty happy if I'm Aaron, right? Because now Trick Room's active, Entei is going to come in, can't extreme speed because of Farigiraf. With that Assault Vest, doesn't have any way to avoid being spored here. Aaron's looking like he's going to push this in the next game, and wow, how about this Farigiraf, right? We're belittling its poor reduced special attack stat, but picks up 2 knockouts on its own and pushes us into this game 3.
So impressive that Aaron was able to get the Tailwind up, stall it out long enough to be able to kind of even things back out after Kazuki had taken so many positive damage trades there, and then got the Trick Room up. That was masterful. We don't always get a chance to see that happen. Both of those speed modes on the same team happening in the same game.
Yeah, I really see why Aaron's one of the greatest in this game, where I think, it starts out looking pretty bad for him, where he does give up that first knockout, and I think it's just such an important decision point for Aaron, right? Where I think at that point he kind of has to figure out, like, well, what's the rest of the entire game for me? Because sequencing what I have left is really important. Ogerpon going down at this point here, and then yeah, in the back he's got Amoonguss and Farigiraf, right? Like, well, this is probably not like the ideal combination of things. How do I set up a winning endgame? And I think Kazuki actually played really well, right? He blocked 2 attacks with the Spiky Shield. He caught the Amoonguss on the switch with the Sacred Fire, but Aaron kind of just figured out the right endgame where it didn't matter that much what Kazuki did.
Yeah, definitely a sigh of relief there. You can see that a little bit of a personal pump up when you get a chance to look at how difficult that situation was at the beginning of that game too. Now though, okay, Scott, we're getting to a point. It's game 3. How far around in the rotation mind game are you going to see whether or not you go with the Trick Room or the Tailwind?
Yeah, I know this is such a miserable matchup for just trying to guess the team preview too, or like, there's so many different reasonable things both sides could do. I think the nice thing on Kazuki's side is that, like, I don't think you have to commit super hard to predicting anything that Aaron's going to do, where like, you kind of want the same group of Pokemon generally no matter what. So it's it's hard to lose the game on turn 1 probably, but this is an important prediction, right? You know, we kind of saw that last game where Aaron didn't really have to like commit to making any difficult predictions until he lost his first Pokemon, where he kind of just like, oh, yeah, it's going to splash some damage around, get the game to a winnable state. So, maybe a quicker start would make a big difference for his opponent here. Another thing to keep in mind too is we've now seen the extreme speed play onto Glamora twice. I think so far it's been more cute than effective, where it didn't end up actually mattering in either game, where nothing wrong with it, right? I mean, the Entei wasn't really going to do anything in either case, but maybe a little more straightforward path would be all right.
I think, too, you called out something really important in that game, too, from Aaron's side, is he was playing a little tepid. Maybe you get a chance to go a little bit harder on some of these reads, but it might be a little difficult. Kazuki's going all-out offense here.
Oh, that's a lot of fun. So I'm going to take back something I just said, where I was like, oh, he kind of probably wants to pick largely the same Pokemon no matter what. Instead, we're seeing the Pokemon we didn't see at all in game 1 or 2. So let's see if that's what Aaron was expecting, right? Where he's trying to like go for the harder Trick Room setup here with the Incineroar next to the Frigoraph, but these are 2 Pokemon here could potentially cause some problems.
We do see a Protect come through onto the Frigoraph. It's really interesting to see that, if only because I think, like, how much do you take from something like a Choice Specs Moonblast from the Flutter Mane? I think that could do a lot of damage.
Yeah, especially because this Tornadus, it can't taunt the Frigoraph, but it does have Sunny Day, right? So you're able to stack the multipliers of this Flutter Mane. Both Choice Specs and Sunny Day is just horrifying. So Aaron kind of wisely backing off here, but Kazuki perhaps anticipating that, going for a switch, maybe expecting that, there'll be a parting shot reposition on the other side of the field.
Yeah, it is just the Protect on the Frigoraph, which is a super nice play to be able to stem some of this actual damage, but it's not even a Terra here. It's just going to be some spread chip with the Dazzling Gleam. Incineroar doesn't really mind that too much, but it leaves this Incineroar to go for the parting shot here. And so now Flutter Mane kept in check a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that changes things a lot, right? No longer a threat of the Sunny Day, at least not imminently. Now the reduced special attack on this Flutter Mane going to make it a little more possible to get this Trick Room up. And with the Moongus coming out, yes, now it looks much safer, right? The Flutter Mane holding the Choice Specs as mentioned previously, so a Spore in that slot is potentially an option if you think that Frigoraph can Trick Room safely. Also, 2 Pokemon who don't want to be hit by Sludge Bomb, right? So lots of good options for Aaron now after that switch. He is considering just bringing Incineroar back in instead. Kind of seen his willingness to grind away, not just immediately take the Trick Room. So, the immediate Trick Room path hasn't looked so good on stream so far today. Maybe this will go better.
I love that approach, because I think what Aaron struggled a lot with in that game number 1 was making sure he was able to actually take out like some of the bigger damage threats before actually getting the Trick Room up. The Ivy Cudgel comes through. It is going to take out the Incineroar, but it did get Intimidate drop. So at the very least, the Frigoraph may take less now when it tries to actually go for that setup. Sludge Bomb takes out Ogerpon to half, and the Frigoraph now gets a chance to come back in at full HP.
Yeah, I think critically too. You mentioned in the previous game that had Ogerpon been healthier, it would have been really difficult for Aaron to deal with. And even though you could have spored the Flutter Mane, maybe he doesn't need to, right? I think now Ogerpon would have to Terastallize to avoid being knocked out by another Sludge Bomb, and certainly at a point now where a Hyper Voice from the Ursaluna later in the game would pick it up. So maybe now it looks a little safer to go for that Trick Room, and I think this looks smart. Losing Incineroar there looks a little silly, like, oh, you switched into Ivy Cudgel, but I don't know that it matters that much, right? Incineroar's job is to create a safe situation for Ursaluna to come in and take over the game, right? And maybe Incineroar's done enough here. The one thing to keep in mind, though, is that last Pokemon is Urshifu. Once again, will not have that Rocky Helmet as a means of trying to break the Focus Sash.
But this Flutter Mane is switching out. It wants to get off the field. It is going to be Entei as that 4th and final. So that is definitely a very important Pokemon to try to get out of the way. It has given Aaron so much trouble in both of these games, but can it pay off to try to catch this Entei off guard?
Oh, he catches it with the Spore on the switch there. So kind of an interesting spot where Entei being put to sleep isn't great, clearly. But because there was no Trick Room on that turn, right, there's like, Aaron's not immediately ready to start taking advantage of that. So if this winds up being a short sleep, there's a world where Entei wakes up just as it needs to snarl and still gets it off here, right? It's going to be important now for Traylor to quickly reposition and get the Ursaluna out quickly enough to take advantage of any potential Trick Room.
All right, the Tornadus is just going to switch in to take that Ogerpon's place. Entei is going to take its mandatory turn of sleep. Once this Trick Room goes up, though, it will be one of the slower things on the field. But this Tornadus, honestly, I really like the switch in here. You can just kind of keep going for damage. You've bought yourself a turn if you're Kazuki. How do you get this Amoonguss off the board or the Blood Moon in?
Yeah, it's sort of awkward now, right? Where I think on Aaron's side, there's a lot of incentive now to not bring the Blood Moon Ursaluna in. Like, try to wait for Entei to wake up so you can respore and then make the switch. The nice thing about how conservatively he's played this game, too, is, like, Vergref is still looking super healthy. The Throat Spray is still intact. You know, he has to. Maybe he just plays this so slowly he gets another Trick Room out. But it looks like he's going to commit and bring the Ursaluna in, perhaps. So kind of betting that, okay, I can win the game because of this Trick Room.
That's if Entei also stays asleep. I think that's really important here. Otherwise, you are going to take a Snarl while you switch in your Blood Moon. That's a lot of damage, though, from the Hyper Voice. Look how much it's able to do when it hasn't taken a Snarl drop. But Entei wakes up! That's huge here because it just goes for the Snarl. It mitigates the Throat Spray, and now Blood Moon Ursaluna is at -1.
Oh, that's really tough for Aaron. It's like the one thing that really needed to not happen for him here. Both sides going to take a Bleak Wind, you know, potentially not super critical damage, although, again, you know, both these Pokemon getting weakened more and more. Another thing to keep in mind for this matchup is going to be, you know, if Kazuki's able to stall out this Trick Room, you know, and just have last Pokemon Fluttermane click Dazzling Gleam and clean the game up, having these weakened Pokemon is a little bit scary.
What's really tough about this, too, is that I'm actually not 100% sure that Blood Moon actually picks up here. At -1, it does not feel like a guarantee. It might come down to a damage roll.
Yeah, at the very least, you get the Hyper Voice here, right? Where there's not really any reason not to, so get a little bit of chip. But yeah, I mean, we've seen how sturdy this Entei is throughout the set. It has that Assault Vest, so big situation. Aaron's kind of betting, okay, I'm pretty sure I win the game if Entei doesn't wake up. It did wake up, so we'll have to see how this goes.
There's also nothing that can really take a switch in that slot, too. So either way, I think you're getting some really big damage down, but you're starting to run out of Trick Room turns. And so Aaron's going to have to make the most of these that he can, which is why we see the Terrestrialization onto the Blood Moon now to get that normal Terra to boost up this Blood Moon and these Hyper Voices. Vergref goes first, though. That actually weakens up the Entei quite considerably, given that that was a critical hit.
Yeah, this Vergref's living, right? Like the second critical hit for a bit. This one might matter a little bit more. Blood Moon's coming down. It's huge if this is a knockout.
Yeah, if this is a knockout, this feels like it could be game, and that it is. 130 base power, by the way. That is a lot of damage. And now Kazuki has no choice except to bring in this Ogerpon and this Fluttermane that Aaron has already taken down to half HP for the Ogerpon.
Yeah, it's a tricky spot, though, right? Where what hasn't been weakened so much is this Fluttermane, and you know, at some point you'd like to match up the Amoonguss against it, but we'll have to see here. Maybe this is a choice specs Fluttermane, so it's going to have to lock into a move. Aaron, you know, pretty clear decision here, right? You know, you go for the Hyper Voice, the Psychic, the Fluttermane, kind of just hope things are enough, but neither side really have like a whole lot of flexibility here. They kind of just have to go for it.
Yeah, you sadly can't go for the Hyper Voice because while we do have Mind's Eye for the Ursaluna, Vergref does not get that. I think it'd be pretty broken.
Yeah, if only, right? Yeah, that and Armor Tail, yeah. What a Pokemon that would be. But yeah, and Trick Room winding down here too. Have to see how much damage all this does. Psychic coming in.
That's considerable. That is a lot of damage. I think the Hyper Voice may just seal the deal here. The Ogerpon for sure is going to get knocked out. The Fluttermane is barely able to hang on. But what does this Fluttermane lock into as its final move of the game? It is going to be the Dazzling Gleam, hoping that the spread damage is enough. The Blood Moon Ursaluna goes down, but the Farigiraf critically is able to hang on.
Yeah, that'll reduce the damage of any future Dazzling Gleams as Amoonguss comes back on the field, but I just don't think it's going to matter. Full health Amoonguss is very excited to see the Fairy-type attack, and Kazuki really has no choice but to lock into it there. There's 2 Pokemon remaining. Really well-played game by Aaron, and this Amoonguss been a little feisty using all these Sludge Bombs, and one more could close the game.
That is going to do it. We won't even see it because Kazuki knows that the writing is on the wall.